Hello, everybody. Thank you all for joining us today in this conversation with Dan Heap, Director of Automation at Paddy Power. We all know Paddy Power very well through their huge chain of licensing bat shops, both in Ireland and the UK. The interesting part is we all know the company, but the lesser known fact about Paddy Power is that they are avid users of automation, and they have achieved quite a successful straight-through processing process and operations with not only competitive pricing and processes, but also an exceptional user experience for customers. And that's what we're going to do today. I'm Josh Schwarz. I'm the CEO of ABB Consultancy, and I'll be the host for this conversation. Dan, thanks a lot for taking the time to speak with us and share your experience.
No problem.
In my perspective, as one of the most well-succeeded initiatives in automation that I've been seeing in this period. Could I ask you to at least to introduce yourself and to explain a little bit who is Dan?
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for inviting me along. It's great to be here. So I'm Dan Heap, Director of Automation at Paddy Power Betfair. Actually, the business is bigger than even what you explained, George. We're part of the Flutter Group, which is the largest betting and entertaining group on the planet. So we have Paddy Power, Betfair, and Sky Bet in UK, Ireland, Betfair in international territories, along with the PokerStars Group. And also then globally, we have Sportsbet in Australia, TVG, FanDuel, and Foxbet in America. So, a huge range of brands in that space in an industry that's still rapidly growing. Role-wise, I've been with the company just over 8 years. Excellence Paddy Power at the time was a business that was growing incredibly quickly, and I joined the Paddy Power brand really to bring a little bit of structure to the way that change management happened and operations happened, and sort of grew my role from there. Looked after insights and scheduling and forecasting gaming operations for a while, and then 14 months ago, I got asked if I could step into a new role and look at how we could establish automation capabilities for the whole of the business. So operations, trading, making sure that we had a standard approach in marketing and internal apps, and how we could move that automation forward. In the last 6 months, it's been great because I've still had the automation, the RPA side, but I've also been developing the Watson side, so customer-focused chatbots. But what really excites me is how we start to clash these technologies together to get that real end-to-end process automation rather than just automating tasks. So that's the journey at a high level that we've been on.
Cool. That's what we'll try to go into a little bit more detail during the conversation. And thank you again, Dan, for doing this. So I would say starting, so Paddy Power is clearly in the forefront of adopting technology to improve, I wouldn't say just operations, but the way the company and the group works globally. So let's talk a bit more about this journey and how it evolved along the time, because surely, as you said, there was a trigger to start, and there is a journey behind this. Sometimes business starts with technology, they get excited with automation, but they are very limited to what they can do with it. You've done quite the opposite. You were able to scale it, and probably that's an important lesson for a lot of the people that this week has today to understand is how can we scale, what should be, how did Paddy Power do that? Because a lot of them struggle to give that step. Can you elaborate a little bit on that, please?
Yeah, so I was fortunate in that I was allowed to set a vision for what we wanted to do from automation, and that meant laying out and getting buy-in around the types of use cases that really appealed and worked for Paddy Power. So quickly identified that we had a lot of people spending a lot of time transferring data between systems. It's not value add work. We identified that we had a lot of people actioning fairly rudimentary straight line decisions. It's not value add. So there was a real clear use case for RPA there. But actually, I wanted to take it further. When I started to piece together some of the processes that we do, you could see there was real opportunity to change the customer experience and change the way operations worked in that space. So that's what we focused on. But what was really important from the start was there was a number of things that we had to get right. automation is, in my opinion, a really valuable tool that businesses should be looking to do more of, to transform their businesses, to make things right more often, to make them more efficient, to make them faster. But that feels as though it's the realm of technology at times. And in our world, we're a tech-first business, and how do technology and RPA fit together? And so we had to explain that. We had to build a clear vision of how we were going to embed that. Then there's always the danger that we start to build bad automation, so it's not scalable, it's not stable. So we had to tackle that problem. And then culturally, there's the view of robots are coming to take our jobs. You know, it's one we have to face, and it's one we had to be open with. Our line pretty much was, we're not here to take away jobs, but we are here to remove the robots from humans. If you're sat every day grabbing a piece of paper, putting it in front of you, typing it, grabbing another piece of paper, putting it in front of you, typing it, unfortunately, we've turned you into a robot. When we did job interviews, we never, we asked you about what your vision was and what your career path was, and what your exceptional skills were, and then we write all that off and say, great, can you grab a pile of papers, put it in front of you, type it into a computer? Like, we're not using people's skills in the way that they should be used. So we had to get those robots out of people rather than robots replacing people's jobs. So there were some of the challenges that we faced early. It was important about setting that longer term vision, delivering things quickly, but also making sure that the governance and the control and the structure around the program was right, as it is with any change management program. This is fundamentally, automation is with some particularly exciting technology that gives you use cases that you probably wouldn't have dreamed of 2 years ago. And making sure that that's embedded in the right way is vital.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. I really agree with you, and I really believe that it's not just about technology, as you stated, right? It's about setting up the right skills and the right governance and the right operational model, and the right understanding that this needs to be adopted at the enterprise level and can be reused even in scale. They can be cheaper than just departmental code.
Yeah, and I think just to add a couple of bits there, George, when we put together the team, we assessed what we wanted in that team, and we selected UiPath for a number of reasons. One, because the community support and the usability of it meant that you could empower people who knew the business to make change rather than needing people who knew the technology to make a change. And that has stood us in really good stead. As we continue to grow the team, we look for internal people who know the business that we can layer on with support, the right skills, but rather than looking for really technical skills who don't understand the business. So that's been a key focus for us.
Cool, thank you, Dan. But as you well said, this is not just, there is not just a remedy for automation, right? People, it's not just about RPA or BPM or AI. There's a mix of remedies that combined take us to where we want to. Can you explain to me a little bit your strategy and what were the core components that you identified as at least the principal ones in this journey?
Yeah, so we wanted to move from RPA, so robotic process automation, to intelligent process automation as quickly as possible. We felt that was where there was larger transformational value in that intelligent process automation space. So that's what we had to lay out. However, I think, having observed a number of programs in businesses that have done automation really well and others that have struggled with it, you've got to make sure you set solid foundations as you go. So you need to understand RPA and its capabilities and what it unlocks from other technology before you go rushing into those other technologies, because otherwise I feel you'll make wrong decisions on the technology to use, and I think that you will end up slightly disappointed with your output. So we focused on identifying RPA, and in parallel, we set some of our change management team. The team was quite small. It was 8 people, delivery manager, 3 BAs, 4 developers. That's the size of the team for the whole of Paddy Power Betfair. We set at RPA plus cognitive. So looking at how we could get AI models plugged into data in order to make better decisions. That didn't take away from the team establishing really strong foundations in RPA, making sure that we released value early, make sure that we showed use cases, and most importantly, learning from our mistakes, putting things live and learning. If I give you one example, we put a process live in fraud. They loved it, and they moved the 4 staff who were doing that task onto something else the next day. Then it fell over 2 days in, of course, because it's a brand new process. And they were like, oh, well, we haven't got the people because they're away doing something else. So we quickly had to learn that probably a 4-week embedding in process to make sure that it worked is significantly better than 1 day. You know, we were trying to move too fast. So yeah, I think we've embedded RPA really well. We're now looking at how we can get RPA and IBM Watson from a natural language processing capability plugged together, because I think that unlocks so many use cases. Imagine as a business, you can have a conversation with a robot and it's going away and doing the tasks that you need it to do. Fairly impressive. We have it working on internal systems around HR. We're looking at how you can do travel bookings in a conversational tool with a robot eventually logging into the system and booking it for you when we can get back to traveling, obviously. But we're looking at cognitive as well. We're trying to put a couple of use cases in there. But I think the big thing I've learned in that space is the quality of your data and the quality of your data feeds has to be right. So we're thinking about that now. I think our journey will be maximizing the value in RPA for the next 6 months, building out the RPA NLP link, probably 9 months, some optical character recognition in terms of reading documents and mainly customer documents around passports, probably 3 to 6 months, and then we're into cognitive. But if I don't start to get the data feeds sorted now, we may hit a bit of a brick wall and end up doing non-transformational items, picking up small bits, and that's not really where I want to be 2 years, 3 years into a program of change of this size. We want to continue that momentum.
Cool. Thank you. It's really interesting to understand how you are mixing and the use cases that you are mixing those capabilities. And as you very well said, it's all about processes and using the right tools for processes, right? So when you started drafting your initiative and after the first experience with these technologies, how would you define success for your program? What are your main goals to achieve that you decided to have when you moved to a more enterprise initiative?
Yeah, so when we looked at this, before we put any sort of momentum into this, we went and visited a number of businesses, and there's some businesses who helped us out massively. I'd be forever grateful for that knowledge sharing. Some of the things that we learned pretty quickly were make sure you have a plan to crystallize the benefit. So make sure that you understand how you're going to do it. If you're going to save hours, what are you going to do with those hours? Do you have a reinvestment plan? Are you going to be happy going and taking a business case to the exec level to say, I want to invest these hours in this project? Because if the answer is no, we're not going to build the automation. If you don't have a plan to reduce costs through the removal of hours, we're not going to build it, because it'll just get swallowed up. Every day, I suspect every one of us goes home with work that isn't done. And that's because we run out of time and don't prioritize it. Equally, we're not all banging down different exec stores saying, I need more time to do this, because we appreciate that some of that stuff just isn't that important and it can stay there for a long time. If all we do is free up time and do some of the unimportant stuff, are we actually maximizing the value of what we do from an automation perspective? So we were really clear in crystallizing that. We probably saved 2,500 hours a week, so somewhere in the region of 60 FTE. And some of that was cost saving through attrition. Some of that was reinvestment. So in our responsible gambling team, for example, a team probably of 14 people, we were able to increase the number of phone calls that team could make by 70% without hiring another person. There was a business case for 7 heads to do that, and we automated some of the manual tasks that they were doing, allowing them to do so much more of the value add pieces. So number one, make sure you have a plan for crystallizing the value. Number 2, make sure that your solutions are stable and scalable. They have to be. People will lose confidence in this if they fall over, particularly as you go into some of the more sensitive areas of the business. So make sure your governance is strong. Make sure that your developers have rigorously tested and set it up, and make sure that happens. And then on the back of those two, explore the art of the possible. Start to understand quickly how you're going to move from automating tasks to automating processes. That's where you get the real transformational element of this. And if you have the foundations of being able to crystallize the benefit that you're going to unlock, allied with strong and stable governance and processes, the art of the possible quickly becomes possible, and you can really start to make those transformations. And you can start to share that across the business. You can talk to the business not in the detail of the process, but in the detail of the problem you solve. So if I give you an example, we have to pull together a number of cases for reviews on customer accounts for various reasons. We built it for one team. We shared the idea around, wouldn't it be great if something could build your case? And then it came to you when you had to do the value add action. Yeah, great. All of a sudden, team number 2 wants it, team number 3 wants it, team number 4 wants it. We have a strong approach and governance around the flows that we've built. We have reusable components that can go into that. So all of a sudden, in 3 and 4 and 5 weeks, you're setting up a new automation process for each of those teams. So that for me is one of the big changes for us. Was we focused on crystallizing hours to start with, but it quickly became apparent that automation is much more than saving hours. It's about doing processes faster than humans can. So all of a sudden, some of the fraud processes that we had appeared to be really valuable. We had an area of fraud that was being exploited by a group of fraudsters. We talked to a third party who ran the system it was on. They quoted us 14 weeks to fix it. We looked at it with RPA and we fixed it in 48 hours. That was a significant saving from a fraud perspective and cut the fraud off immediately. Took us another 2 weeks to get that into a fully productionized, stable and scalable way rather than running on somebody's laptop. But we were able to make a difference really quickly. And with that success came a view of, wow, actually, it's not change the customer experience. We can protect the customer better. We can do operations better. And that opened up so many more doors around the opportunities for automation, which we're now exploring. So our roadmap would be a mix of cost saving and customer improvements as the main two in that space. So that's how the journey evolved.
Well, thank you. That's quite a recurrent question that we have from our clients is what should be the goals and how to set up those goals. That's really great. But obviously, in a journey like yours, there's a lot of positives, but obviously there were some hurdles in the way. Okay,
yeah.
Can you highlight some of them and what you did to overcome them?
Yeah. I've touched on a few of them already, but maybe I'll go into a bit more detail on some of them. So this capability is sort of pushing its way into organizations at times between technology and operational teams. So from day -1, we were talking to the technology teams around what our goals were with RPA, what we were doing with it, how we were going to work with them, how we were going to provide a feedback loop on what we'd automated so that if they decided it needed to be part of the core technology, they could pick it up and build it. We weren't precious about them taking that off. It just meant we could have licenses back to do other stuff, in that time. So build those relationships with technology from day one. Definitely in other businesses, we've seen that that's been a problem. And as the group's grown and there's more interest now globally around process automation, I find I spend a good deal of my time with tech teams talking to them about how this isn't here to take over. We're not trying to change this business from being a tech first business. It is now and it always will be a tech first business. But operational teams have problems, and what we're trying to do is create a technology that allows them to solve the problems quickly, therefore driving efficiency and improve customer experience. So get in front of your tech teams, cut that problem off before it starts, because if you get too far down the road, there's a chance that on the first wobble, the first failure, all of a sudden there's a "we told you so, this technology is not suitable, it's built by cowboys." That isn't the case. Set your governance strong, set your ways of working strong, get tech involved, develop the feedback loops. You'll solve that problem straight away. Secondly, this technology allows you to move really quick, and we have moved quick. We probably have somewhere in the region of 90 processes now live on robots in 12 months. Some running every 10 minutes, some running overnight, different schedules. So you can move quick on this, but it is the technology that can potentially suck you in to move too quick. So all of a sudden, you've got a group of developers, you've empowered them with the ability to be transformational, and they go chasing stuff that's really transformational, and they're building it on foundations that aren't strong. So it can suck you into moving too quick. As I touched on, when things were live, people were moving staff off the process immediately. You can't do that. You need that 4 week. Well, we use a 4 week bending period. We sort of work on cycles of around 5.5 weeks for delivery. We probably can squeeze that half a week, maybe a week to 4.5 weeks, but I'd rather have the quality than a week. Do you know what I mean? If they started to stretch to 12 and 13 weeks, I think I'd have a conversation. But am I really going to squeeze the team? They'll probably listen to this, so this weakens my position with them a bit. But do I really want to squeeze them from 5.5 to 4.5 weeks at risk of losing quality? Probably not. So we use 4.5, 5 week deliveries, 4 week to embed afterwards. And it's really important that you have that period to make sure that the processes are stable, all the edge cases and all the items that can get missed when you're doing your process work get ironed out. So they'd be the big things that I would say are essential. And then the third thing, again, is governance. And I've touched on it a lot, and I probably sound a little bit dull. Back career is GE. So change management was strong. We want this to be a key part of a FTSE 30 business. We can't do stuff that's not stable and scalable. So bring in people who have that change management control and can help you with that original governance that your team are going to work to. And I think you'll cut off a lot of the problems. The problem then comes a little bit further down the line in there's a danger you just become another roadmap and another bottleneck. And the aim of, if I go back to one of the aims at the start here was teams to solve their problems quickly to move forward. If you find yourself becoming the next roadmap and the next bottleneck, something's gone wrong. So how are you going to get this functionality spread through the business so that people can own it? It can start in a central team to set the governance and set the processes and set the procedures and prove the value. But I think you've got to then stretch it into teams across the business so that they own it themselves. So make sure you're looking at that. And then the final one, if I can throw it in, is you have to break the view that the central team own the robots. You may build a robot for somebody, but it's part of their team. They have fleshy workers and metal workers, but it's part of their team. So our responsible gambling team called their robot Leroy is now, he's now seen as an integral part of their team. If you don't get that relationship early, when it falls over, what you get is people saying your robots are broken. Not my robots. I don't run the processes. It's your robots. So you've got to look after it in the same way you look after a human. So we've done things where people have made changes, which meant the robot fell over. And we've been quite harsh in saying you need to roll back that change, and we'll put a change request in, and then we fix the robot. You've got to get that behavior early. So now we see great work in that space from some of our teams coming and saying, we want to make this change to the system in 6 weeks. Do you think it'll affect the robot? So half an hour get together between the guys. They look at what they want to change. They look at how it's going to affect the robot. If it's a no, go ahead. If it's a yes, change request goes in, and we make sure we're built ahead of that. But that relationship of them owning the robot is important. If you're just there to pick it up every time it falls over because people are making changes, you'll chase your tail forever.
Completely agree. Thank you for that, Dan. You probably answered the next question already in terms of the things, and you've been covering not all the hurdles, but the success criteria for your initiative. Maybe I'll go to the next one around. Well, I normally call it the crystal ball question. Picking your experience with automation, but knowing you a bit, and knowing that you are very, you pay a lot of attention to automation market and what the market is doing. What you think are the trends that people should be paying attention to?
Yeah. So I think as I watch the world evolve and in conversations with people, I think the next big transformational piece is how we link RPA and natural language processing technology together. At this moment, I don't think anybody's cracked it without needing to involve internal tech teams to open up those tunnels so that things can talk to each other and maintain context in conversation. But I think that that's potentially the way we change the world. I talk to people in the business fairly regularly around, imagine if you were sat at home on a Saturday and sporting results were, not going our way and you wanted to do something about it, you wanted to change the cash out value, or you wanted to put an offer in front of people because when they're on a winning streak, they want to play some more. Imagine if you could have a conversation in Slack saying, tell me what the most successful marketing campaigns for football customers are. And the robot goes away and does it and brings it back, and you can then work through that and turn it into something. Like, that's pretty cool. That's pretty transformational in terms of the way people work and the way people think. That's at the moment, that's, can you put a ticket in a system and then somebody has to go and set the ticket up, whereas here you could have a conversation and a robot can be plugged in to execute the end-to-end process because you've successfully partnered NLP to ask the questions that are needed to fill the form for the decisions for the robot to make and do it. And that for me feels like a big step forward. So once that pipeline opens, and I know that everybody's trying to find that pipeline at the moment, and we're working with tech teams internally to build pipelines for ourselves at the moment. I think it's got to be open. If I go back to, you want teams in businesses to own this, then you can't be going to technology every time you need a tweak to an API or a pipeline open. There's got to be some connector. So I think that's one of the big changes that are coming. And then I think the penny's finally starting to drop with people that, particularly for people who are, dealing with time-pressured items, that the ability for them to just instruct a robot to go and do something, give me an account summary, add this card, change the details, and the ability for a robot to go and have that conversation with a customer to fill it in is, I know that's in place in things like banking and insurance, but in our world, we're not selling fridges. We're not selling things that sit on a shelf forever. We're betting on the next race. It's 5 minutes away, and once that race is gone, that opportunity is gone forever. So we have to get things right quick. So being able to empower a robot to go and make those changes, or an army of robots to go and make those changes, is vital. So I think they're the big things for me. I think that AI is developing and improving. I think some of the models and some of the modeling businesses that are around are interesting. But I think before you get into those in detail, you've got to really understand your data sources and the data quality, because you're going to trust things to make decisions.
Dan, thanks a lot for that. Before we wrap up and go to the final point, I have part of the questions that we received from the audience today. You already been going through all of them. There is one that stands that I would like us to cover is, how do you identify the right processes to be automated, and where do you start, and how do you do that processes? How do you know that you are applying technology to the right thing?
Again, we set up this was a key process that we set up at the start around how we would identify this. So we start with a process form that goes out, and we ask the teams to fill in the processes they do, how long it takes, how often they do it. So it gives us a view of the size of processes that we need to go and investigate. There's a danger if you don't do that you'll go in and talk about somebody's pet project. Oh, I hate franking post letters, and all of a sudden you think that's a big issue. You go and look at it and it saves 20 minutes. Like, it doesn't make sense. So you've got to get a baseline of the processes that you're going to go and investigate in greater detail. So get that process form out and get people filling it in. The BAs will set a plan around which processes they're going to go and target, and they will go in and get a walkthrough of the processes. We'll often take a developer with them so that the developers can chip in with what they think is possible and the complexity of it. So those sessions are really quick to get a view of, yeah, this is doable and it's easy, or yes, it's doable but it's going to be difficult. So the BAs and the developers will then come back and have a discussion. And we have a framework around making sure we understand the size of the crystallizable benefit and also the effort that's involved. We will regularly not pick things up that are less than a 1 FTE crystallizable saving, just because it's difficult to crystallize it. And we definitely won't pick it up if it's medium or difficult complexity. So that's going to say that it's going to take 2 or 3 of our delivery sprints to do. So 9 or 13 weeks. That's a quarter of a year for a full developer to potentially automate something less than 1 FTE. you know, your ROI is gone. We're probably running at an ROI of 10x at the moment. If I start allowing people to do things that are 4x, doesn't make sense. So high level, that's what we do. But as I said, when I set up the team, I brought 2 people in with who'd been in my operational excellence team previously, and had headed up my insights team, and both have still fantastic change management skills, allied with a financial background and an insights background. Pairing those skills together gave a real clear view of what we were going to do and what we weren't going to do, because they didn't get carried away in terms of building a long tail. I think one of the other things I'd talk about here, George, as well, is we're not obsessed with building a long roadmap, because processes change. So if we built a long roadmap and did the requirements on processes, by the time we pick it up, it's stale and you have to redo all the work. Our roadmap is probably only 2 or 3 delivery sprints long. It's probably only the next 12 to 16 weeks of development for the team. That enables that we're tackling things that are still problems, rather than, the business here moves so quick and processes change so often and requirements change so often that if we were to invest, if I was to get the BAs to just constantly be writing requirements so that I could go to somebody and say, here's the plan for the next 2 years, it'd all be stale. I wouldn't have any confidence in it. To evolve and deliver a fresh roadmap, focus on delivering the value. But the longer term projects are us stretching to see how we can plug in the next capability that we want to launch. So I may run a project and say to one of the BAs, can you go and figure out this process that's going to need cognitive and tell me what we need, so that we're already starting to then put the foundations in to build to that, so that as we get there in 12, 16 weeks time, we know where we're going with plugging that new capability in and making sure that, again, it's stable and scalable for us to use.
Cool. Then those are precious insights, okay, and very strong messages to our colleagues and friends that are listening today, because, as you said, business changes with a speed. The pandemic is a good, very recent case. The amount of businesses that suddenly had to readapt everything in weeks. I think it's self-explanatory, but I think a lot of people didn't get it yet. So your insights here are very good to allow to them to go back to the drawing boards of their automation initiatives and pay attention to those details. Thanks a lot. It was really, really good. So as a final question, because the others that we receive from the audience, I think you covered them quite well along the session, so if you could summarize in 2 or 3 main bullets what you really think a client needs to succeed, what would they be?
Yeah, 2 or 3 is difficult, but I will try. So I would say ensure that you raise awareness of automation, what it is and what it isn't across the business, particularly making sure that you have built strong relationships with technology and product development departments. Vital. 2, make sure that the benefits that you're going to deliver, particularly early, are crystallizable. This is something that you can build momentum in quickly, but you need to show results quickly. So make sure you do that. And 3, set strong governance around your approach so that you have a scalable and stable approach to automation. The rest of it will fall into place after that. You will start to be able to do the cool and exciting stuff quicker if you're dropping it onto a stable way of working and a stable maintenance model to go forward. So that's where I would say focus your early energy in terms of getting this off the ground.
Cool. Then thanks a lot for your time. It was really, really great insights, and I think really strong messages to our colleagues that are starting or struggling to scale their initiatives, and that is priceless. Okay, so thanks a lot for your time. I really hope you the best, that you succeed, and if anyone else has questions about this, please redirect us to us, and we'll find a way to make them get to Dan.
Yeah, and if people want to come and see what we're doing and exchange ideas, then my door's always open to listen to those opportunities. So please feel free to catch me on LinkedIn or drop me an email. I'm sure, George, you can share that email address with people if they want to get in touch.
Cool. Then again, thanks a lot. Good luck.
Pleasure.
And please keep safe.
Thank you.
Okay, to all of you guys. Also, thank
Cheers.
you for attending, and see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.